Welcome to Kettlebell Corner, where strength meets theory, where we talk all things kettlebells. I'm Jeremiah Waylon, and he's Roger Parks. And in this episode, we're going to do something bold here, Roger. We're going to defend kettlebells, all right? This could be the tool you've chosen to use, something you're looking to choose, or maybe it's something you already have in your routine a little bit. It's a great system for people, but not all people, and we'll explain some of the reasons why it may or may not be good for you, and the nature of what it does and doesn't do well. And we only upload one episode a week, so be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and increase your press every time you listen. Roger, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, I'm very passionate about kettlebells, not just because, you know, we talk about them a lot, but because they've helped me in a fitness way that I've never experienced with anything else. And yes, I've done it all, Roger, even the shake weight. Okay. But I didn't hold it to my face like all my friends told me to do. Oh. Okay. But we need, yeah, thank goodness. And it's probably before cell phones. You know, we're going to lay out the arguments here today, why they're good, some things that you want to consider. But let's just start them out, Roger. What are some of the things that kettlebells do well? I think we could get right into it. Do you think so?
I think so. We need to, you know, we'll thread in some of the arguments that people make against them. But I do think that we could start with the tool itself. Okay. And talk about what it does well. We need to get to the arguments because we should take them seriously. Kettlebells get criticism from some dum-dums who don't understand anything, but kettlebells will also get criticism from really smart, reputable people, and for a good reason. And a lot of that, as we'll talk about, is the alleged coaches who are applying kettlebells in maybe questionable circumstances. So I think if we're looking to defend this tool, I think we should understand a little bit about it first. What does it do well? Well, the nature of the tool, there's a handle that is designed ideally to be grasped in one hand. You can use two, that's fine for some lifts, but generally this is a handle great for one hand at a time. So you have unilateral training. You have the ability to train your arms independently, or your feet, I guess, if you want to do some weird stuff with it. But
which we can get into later.
let's stick with the hand. So you've got a great unilateral tool. The handle where you grasp the bell is offset at a distance from the center of mass of the bell. And without going into this too much, the center of mass of the bell is going to be basically inside the globe of the bell, raised a little bit up toward the handle, right? That extra mass pulls that center of mass up just a little bit. The problem, though, is this globe can't sit around your forearm. Okay, so the side of the kettlebell, when you're holding it in the rack position, and the position of the bell is important. So when you're holding the bell in the rack position, the globe of the bell has mass. It can't pass through your arm. So there's going to be a distance. There's going to be an angle between where the bell wants to ideally hang. So let's say you're hanging it off of a clothesline. It's going to hang straight down, right? But it can't do that because your arm is in the way. So anytime you're holding a kettlebell in the rack position, certainly, and in many other positions as well, the center of mass is going to be able to, at a distance from the point where it rotates. So there's an element of rotational training. The nature of the bell when you hold it in that rack position. So handle in your hand, the back of the bell or one side of the bell resting against the back of your forearm. There's going to be a tendency toward rotation, whether it's forward or it's backward. So you have some rotation and you have a center of mass that's offset from the handle. This gets into the next thing, which you can't neglect, is for unilateral ballistic lifts, there is nothing better than a kettlebell, at least in the sagittal plane. At least in the sagittal plane. So think about moving straight forward and back, right? That's the sagittal plane. So you have other tools that are great in the frontal plane, for example. People use kettlebells in the frontal plane. I don't use them that much because the nature of the globe can take out a kneecap So I actually prefer like a steel mace, an Indian club, a heavy club. There are other tools that I like there. But those tools, as great as they are in the frontal plane, so think moving side to side, you can't swing them in the sagittal plane as well. You can't swing them with the same intensity because you can't link the arms to the body in the same way. And in the position where you do link the arms to the body the same way, the handle makes them much harder to grasp. So you're limited in the rate at which you can swing them, or the mass, the load that you can actually move. So kettlebells are fantastic for ballistic lifts. So we're talking swings and cleans and snatches. There are other things you can do these lifts with, like barbells. We're going to talk a lot about barbells. We think barbells are a fantastic tool, but you can't do unilateral training the same way with a barbell. And you can't do ballistic lifts unilaterally the same way with a barbell. So just the nature of this tool starts to predispose you to some interesting things. So in addition to, let's say, the ballistic lifts, you have a certain, we'll call it a proprioceptive richness to kettlebells. Your proprioceptors are these sense receptors that you have, and they give you an awareness of where you are in space. So
not outer space, just the space you occupy.
Just the space.
Just to be clear,
occupy.
This isn't a space podcast.
Thank you for clearing that.
Just want to make sure.
So your proprioceptors will give you some feedback as to for example, a common example explaining this is when you're walking and let's say you step on a rock. Your proprioceptors will let you know that your ankle is tilted a little bit, and they can help you make some adjustments, some fine tuning, so you don't fall, you don't hurt yourself. So because the kettlebell has an offset center of mass, you're doing some rotational training. So there's a little bit more richness. There's a little bit more of a demand in that regard. Now the greater complexity means that there can be less intensity. Right? There's an inverse relationship between those two. And that will, if you place if you're looking at intensity and you place a kettlebell beside a barbell is going to win 9 out of 10 times unless you're talking about swings, right? But if you don't need that, then if you don't need all that intensity, you need some intensity, but you need a tool that allows you to get kind of let's call it a more 3-dimensional view of your body, give you a greater experience of stress throughout all of the range of motion that your joints can create, then kettlebells are a fantastic tool. So we've got to ground this in something, and I think the nature of the tool means that it can do things that other modalities can't do. So I would argue that kettlebells can do most of what barbells do, or I'm sorry, not barbells, dumbbells rather. Kettlebells can do most of what dumbbells do, but they do it better. Not that they're not useful, not that they're not great, but there are a lot of things that kettlebells can do that dumbbells can do, but kettlebells have an added dimension. Things like curls and chest presses and those things, those are much better with barbells or dumbbells. I gotta stop.
Yeah, you're really on these barbells, bro.
I gotta stop that. So I don't like to get even into this whole idea of ranking. And if I'm being quite honest, the scaring anyone off of any modality, I don't care to do. Everything is going to be context dependent. And if you want to know what is better, then give me a context. This is the person, this is their background, and explain to me, what it is they're trying to do. Then we can say, this tool is going to be better. So we won't even say better. Let's just say there are many things that you can do with a kettlebell that you cannot do with a dumbbell.
Yeah. And in particular, we train a lot of general population type of folks in varying ages. Mostly, I would say, for me, at least, I only speak for myself, mostly people around my age, a little bit younger, a little bit older, late 30s, early 50s-ish. And they're a fantastic tool for that crowd, like a general population, general strength, like strength that will be undeniable. And I know we're going to get into some of these benefits and some of these magical moments, if you will, that can come from using a kettlebell. but they are excellent for that. And I like what you said, Roger, about the context dependent, because obviously if you're trying to be a bodybuilder, they're not going to be the tool for you. If you're trying to be a power lifter and to lift maximally, they're not going to be a tool for you. But I'd like to start with, well, I guess let me see what you want to start with. Do you want to start with what they're good for and what they deliver on, or some of their limitations?
Well, I think we need to take these arguments seriously. I've heard some stupid arguments. One we'll talk about later, that they're too expensive. That's a dumb argument, and we'll knock that down really quickly. But there's one that recurs quite a bit that I do think that we need to take seriously. So you got some people in the fitness world who like to just bash kettlebells and not really give a reason why. Like Mark Ripito, long time barbell coach, great coach, really smart guy. He likes to make fun of kettlebells, but he doesn't even talk about why. So you can't grapple with that. There's no argument. You get other guys like Mike Israetel, bodybuilder, professor, exercise science guy, who does less making fun of them and just points out their limitations. And one of the main limitations that he points out is the optimal argument. Okay. If you are trying to optimize muscle growth, if you're trying to optimize strength, this is not the best tool to do that. Completely agree. I think anyone who disagrees with that is probably a silly person.
Silly.
Okay? But when we get into this idea of optimize, it starts to raise some questions. What does that mean? It usually means the best way to do something. But you can't, going back to what I just said, you can't talk about the best way to do something until you talk about the person we're trying to do it to. Okay? There's no one way. And let's say, for the sake of argument, which I do think is true, under normal circumstances, trying to train limit strength with a barbell is going to be the best. But what if you don't have the ability to train with a barbell and you want to increase some limit strength? Kettlebells may be an option. In that case, the kettlebell is going to be the more optimal tool. Okay, so we just want to talk about what these things do well and what they do not do well. So the optimal argument is a serious argument that we should grapple with. And what it usually comes down to is you cannot load many patterns heavy enough with a kettlebell to really elicit significant gains in strength and muscle mass. Okay, I'm less inclined to go with that, depending upon what pattern you use for muscle mass, because muscle mass a lot is volume and stretch and things like that. And you can certainly grow some mass with kettlebells, although it's not really built into the system. And I do think using barbells, dumbbells, and cables, bands, that's a better way to go about it. I don't think there's a real debate about that. But I do think that we need to talk about this idea of optimal. Even if everybody has all of these options on the table, we need to ask a couple questions. What do you like doing? What do you want to do? Because that's where any of these arguments, if you're general population, if you're just a regular person who's trying to get exercise and occasionally train for a goal, we need to start with what it is you like to do. Because if you've heard that, this personality or that personality says this is the best thing, but you don't like doing it, guess what? You're not going to do it. And if kettlebells are right for you, then use kettlebells.
They most certainly are, and I use them. And, that's something I came to because just like you said, what is right for me? I wasn't into using dumbbells anymore. I wasn't into spending that time in the gym like that. I didn't have the access to the barbell without the gym. And, at the time, and even more so, they gave me essentially the ability to have some freedom within my movements and try something and learn. There is a learning curve to them, right? So I think that's one of the arguments that could be presented, that there is this learning curve, and anything good is worth learning, right?
Well, sure. I mean, there's going to be a learning curve to all modalities. The difference with kettlebells, though, and also with barbells, is less so with cables, less so with dumbbells. There is a learning curve, and if you do it wrong, there is a greater risk of injuring yourself than the other two modalities, in my opinion. So they're generally safer, which is why a lot of my older folks, a lot of the people I'll do like a rehab type program with, I will stick with cables and I'll stick with dumbbells. because cables have a very, like, you can see the line of force, right? You can see how everything lines up well. It's not coming straight down on them. And with dumbbells, the motion of the tool is very predictable. It's not going to roll away with the same intensity. But, when we get to this optimal, when we talk about the optimal movement, the overall argument is, well, you can't load it enough. Partially, I think that's the fault of the kettlebell community. We were chatting offline, and my clients are pretty savvy at this point, and they also like to harass me. So they send me videos of coaches that they think are bad, and they like to make fun of them. So if you are a coach and you're listening, there are plenty of clients out there who will make fun of you, and they're on to your nonsense. So
you're exposed. Also, if you think you want Roger to make fun of them, you should send them to us too.
Yeah, I probably will. But this particular video showed a sequence of moves with a single, I think it was a 40 kilo kettlebell. Okay, so this video starts off with, kind of an offset stance, like a split squat, kind of a goblet squat thingy, but 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. Like, okay, that's a challenging movement. And, 40 kilos, it's not easy weight. There's something about holding that dead weight in your arms rather than having it on your back, which will challenge you in a different way. So are you going to be able to build the same kind of strength you will by putting, 800 pounds on your back? No, you're not going to be able to do that. But for regular people, you can get a little bit out of that. And I can see you making a good argument for including that movement. But then I think the very next thing this guy goes to is he lies on his back and he's holding a kettlebell, the same bell by the globe of the bell. I know I'm getting worked up. I'm sorry. By the globe of the bell, which I'm not a safety guy. I'm not, the safety police, you're going to put your eye out. I'm not him, but this is not safe. Okay. There's no, if you're holding a bell by the globe with two hands over your face or your chest, there's no off ramp. Okay.
Yeah, the off ramp is your face.
Sure. Especially as you start working and you get sweaty, these things can drop, but forget about that. Let's forget about safety. This particular coach, my guess is anywhere between his 20s and 40s, and he's ripped, he's in good shape.
Is he tan?
Yes, and in my opinion, very underdeveloped, which is what a lot of the critics are going to see. They're going to say, this guy's scrawny, which there's an argument there. But if you are a grown, healthy male, and you are 2-arm pressing 88 pounds.
That's 40 kilo for those clocking at home.
That's embarrassing. Okay. There's no other like that you were so ridiculously underloaded that you're going to get guys like Mike Israetel calling not just you, but the rest of us out because you were doing stupid things. Okay. You were wasting time. There's no scientific justification for including that. And this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about that you see with a lot of these other coaches. So you have these awkward patterns that are way underloaded. And when you look at these physiologists and exercise scientists looking like, what are you guys doing? Like, this is ridiculous. And then you look at some of these longtime coaches, we talk about them a lot. You go into Strong First and you see people who use kettlebell training correctly as a part of their fitness, also body weight, also barbells. These people are monsters and they're moving ridiculous amounts of weight and they have all kinds of physical attributes. So unfortunately, there are very few people who have that type of pedigree, who have the same visibility as, the guy with the backwards hat who's overly tanned.
Wait. Is that a shot at me? Well, at least say shredded too.
No, I'm good.
All right. So
we have to look at the overload argument.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about the overload argument then. So if we talked about the optimal, let's talk about the overload. Now that you brought up this weak 40 kilo 2-arm press.
The overload argument is consistent progress and different progressions within exercise are going to require you to continually overload a movement. And the idea is that kettlebells just can't get heavy enough, right? Absolutely true for many patterns, many patterns. And again, we've already dealt with the optimal argument, and we're just going to say what is optimal for the general population, for most people, can be handled with kettlebells in terms of loading, in terms of movement patterns. Not everybody. So if we get rid of the people, I want to build a ton of mass and I want to build a ton of strength, we can get rid of the optimal, right? So now we move to the overload. When you see a coach who is deadlifting your same 40 kilo kettlebell, yes, you look silly. That is the world record is over 1,000 pounds, and you think that somehow deadlifting a 40 kilo kettlebell is going to create progressive overload and make anything happen. You are a silly, silly person. Okay.
That is, unless you're doing 5,000 reps, like you said,
even still, right? Even still, you're wasting a lot of time. Now, if you're doing something that's, you're trying to drill your technique, or if you're getting stronger and 40 kilos is still overload for you, that's totally cool. Again, we got to go back to context. But when we're looking at the ability at a certain point, kettlebells top out. It's rare to see them above even 40 kilos, right? So you have to address that. And again, when you see people with doing deadlifts like that, you're not helping the cause. Maybe a one-legged, work a little balance. But again, complexity and intensity have this inverse relationship. So as you get more complex, your loading has to drop anyway. So it doesn't mean it's not a useful pattern. It just means you can't create that overload. And that's what kettlebells don't do well with particular patterns. However, take the same 40 kilo kettlebell, double it up, give me a double clean, and hold it in the rack squat, and then give me or the rack position, and then drop and give me 10 squats. Now, there are a lot of people who can do that, but they are all in fantastic shape. If you can take two 40 kilo bells, hold them in the rack, and do 10 squats, then you've got probably both some significant size and strength, because it is not easy to do. Not with
just cleaning them up.
Technique.
There's a challenge,
Exactly. So you have to stick within certain patterns when you're really looking to overload. Same with an overhead press. You take a couple bells overhead, and here is an argument for kettlebells. The center of mass of the bell actually at the top rests behind the shoulder, whereas with a barbell, it's more likely to rest over your chest. And in order to get it over your shoulder, you need to go behind the neck, which is a little more awkward. So kettlebells can be great for overloading tissue, especially in the mid delt, because otherwise you don't get the same line of force. So if you want to use overload for kettlebells, totally fine. But you've got to think about you're mainly sticking to your squats and your presses. You're not going to get all the way up to your limit strength, but they're going to be more than heavy enough. If you're wasting time with things like deadlifts, once you're a seasoned practitioner, you're going to be way underloading. So don't waste your time. If you need to use the movement to, let's say, groove something, improve your technique, do what you need to do. Otherwise, you are going to be underloading, and the critics of kettlebells are going to be absolutely correct. But there's one more thing that you need to think about with load, and that is when you start moving things fast, the load that your body senses, the load that your body needs to stabilize increases. Okay, so the mass of the bell will not increase. Does not happen. It's not gonna change. But when we're really looking at the forces that your body experiences, once you start increasing the rate of acceleration with a swing, okay, especially if it starts to out accelerate gravity, okay, so roughly 10 meters per second square, if you can get it going faster than that, then that mass is going to be far more effective at challenging your body. And then we get into Newton's third law, that the forces that we're generating are forces that we need to stabilize. So now all of a sudden, the 40 kilo bell becomes a lot more significant in terms of the forces that your body needs to stabilize than just a bell that's sitting on the floor. So that is something that you want to think about. Now, is that the type of strength you need? I don't know. But I will say that kettlebells have a consistent what we call in the community the what the hell effect. They have a consistent pattern of under-promising and over-delivering. That you shouldn't be able to put a bunch of weight on your deadlift by doing kettlebell swings, but guess what? I've done it. You've done it. I know a lot of people who have done it. There's just something that happens, and part of it, I think, is how the physics behind it work. The mechanical loading of your tissues increases once you start moving fast. It's a different skill, so you're going to need to integrate that into your lift. Maybe it's neurological, maybe it's more coordination, maybe it's your brain, adapting to this more proprioceptively rich tool. But good things happen, and that's something that you shouldn't miss out on. Don't just look at the bell and think, oh, it's only 40 kilos. Well, it's only 40 kilos while it's sitting on the ground.
Yeah. And
moving
not
faster.
Moving. Yeah. Not moving
faster
fast
and see
enough.
what happens.
Yeah. Then it becomes quite a lot, especially if you're trying to move it fast overhead. So that's some of the, I'll say that's some of the half glass empty type stuff. Well, let's talk about some of the half glass full type things that the kettlebell does and what they work well. What are some of the advantages? We talked a little bit about, getting them, what they're used for, ideally some rotational training, some of these unilateral stuff, ballistic lifts, but they're going to deliver.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear about rotational training in that when you hold a bell, let's say you have a bell in your front rack, right? That it is going to challenge one side of your body and it is going to force you to stabilize that rotation. So I want to be clear what we're talking about. This is useful for regular people, useful in fitness. A lot of people injure themselves in odd positions or with holding odd loads. So we're not talking about spinning in circles with the kettlebell.
Yeah, this ain't no Britney Spears things.
We're talking about the nature of the tool makes things want to rotate. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and that's actually a good point. And I do want to say that odd position strengthening, if you are somebody who does carry things, move things, have children, all this sort of stuff, that is going to be a key benefit to the kettlebells is having that ability to hold these loads in that rack position, overhead, down by your side, all these sort of things. That stuff is what's going to carry over significantly well with that sort of thing. One of the other benefits is speed strength. And when we talk about speed strength, Roger, are we just talking about the ability to move the bell fast or punching power?
Without getting into a real technical discussion, that yes, that there are different types of strength. There is a slow strength, which is a limit strength. There's a speed strength, which is not going to be limit. You cannot exert your maximum force and your maximum speed at the same time. It's physiologically impossible. But you can get better at both things, which can maybe transfer over to some sort of athletic endeavor. So, you're going to need a different type of strength to deadlift something really heavy versus punch someone in the face, which is why there are plenty of people. I remember watching a couple of the strongmen who got in the ring and had a little boxing match, and they're really, really strong guys. And of course there's some technique issues, but I'd be willing to bet if you were to put them in the ring with an equivalent, even a lighter fighter, I think you're going to see them be embarrassed pretty quickly, because there's not just a skill gap. It's that there's a specific kind of strength that goes into punching, and they've spent all of this time and energy cultivating a particular kind of strength that does not translate into knockout power the same way. So speed strength is the ability to move things quick.
And then we have strength endurance, which is one that I'm particularly a fan of, just as somebody who likes to be able to do things for a long period of time when needed. And that is something you're going to get quite a bit with kettlebells. And, in the coming episodes after this, we are going to kind of talk about how to organize some of those sort of things with complexes and stuff like that, and, linking things together. But that's one of the great things. Do you have any elaboration on the sort of strength endurance benefit from the kettlebells, Roger?
Nothing. I don't think we don't need to talk much about it now. We will talk about it in the upcoming episode, but it really is just the ability to move load over time. And there are a variety of ways you can do that, whether it's something else that a lot of people don't understand unless you're within the system of kettlebells. Kettlebells tend to use high volume training spread out over a longer time at a higher rate of frequency. Whereas, you look at maybe a powerlifting workout, you're going to do maybe a deadlift once a week. Some people will do twice maybe, but most people will do they'll do once at a high level. They'll squat once or twice. They'll bench once or twice with a lot of recovery in between. With kettlebell training, you can have multiple touches over a 20, 30, 40-minute period and do a decent enough amount of volume to grow, but slow, but take breaks in between, which will increase your overall endurance. And you can do that several times per week. You can do that day in and day out, which is, one of the episodes we just aired not that long ago on 100 swings. You can't do 100 of most lifts every day, but with swings you can do that. So there is not just something about the tool, but in the nature of kettlebell training, the system itself and how it works, that will allow you to build endurance day in and day out over just a lot more touches, a lot more volume, done with a lot of recovery built into your workouts. So like I'm thinking things like iron cardio, for example, which isn't going to necessarily give you a true cardio effect, but it's going to give you a lot of that effect, and it's going to create a lot of really, really solid physical attributes by doing, a clean, a press, a squat, put the bell down, shake it out, and do that over however many rounds, a 40-minute period. And you'll start to see some cool changes. One of the attributes of the kettlebell is actually the system within which it's used. And that's one thing that people often overlooked. It's really easy to criticize from the outside and not see this because you haven't used it. But the nature of the work is a little bit different.
Yeah. And another great thing about the bells in their nature is they're relatively small compared to all other equipment, and the amount that you need to actually get some stuff done. They're extremely portable. The space that it takes, if you have 2 or 3 good bells that will, be there for you, it doesn't take up a lot of space. And as somebody who travels frequently, especially if you're driving somewhere, it's simple enough to put a 24 kilo, which is like, I don't know, maybe at this point in my stage, it's sort of a lighter bell, but let's just say it's a 28. It doesn't matter. You find which one wherever you're at, and it's there for you wherever you go. So you can apply your training wherever it's at and keep fitness up. Are you going to be like making huge gains? Not necessarily. Again, like Roger likes to say, it's context. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to maintain? Or maybe you're going to do a snatch test and maybe you can just take that bell and do it. But that's one of the great things. You had alluded to this earlier, Roger, so I want you to talk about this a little bit. And it's the price of a kettlebell and why this argument sort of comes up when you start to see what the prices for a good quality kettlebell are. And I'm not talking about these ones on Amazon or the stuff you see in most hotels, but like real good quality cast iron or even, competition depending upon their use. But what do you got?
So if I'm answering the question, why are people talking about it? I think because they want something to talk about. I think they're trying to create content. I think this is just a stupid argument that is really easy to swat aside. You have somebody, I've seen 2 videos, both avid barbell lifters, and in the background, I'm seeing easily $10,000 worth of equipment as they're sitting there complaining about kettlebells being too expensive. To get a really good deadlift, to get I don't care what they are. I want to talk about the argument just because I don't want people to be deterred, because kettlebell training is actually significantly less expensive than barbell training. In most situations, to get a really good bar that's not going to snap on you. I came across a video today where Eddie Hall, who used to be one of the world, he won World's Strongest Man. He was laughing at some, gym fails, right? And in one of those, a guy was doing a deadlift and, or some, I don't know what, some lift, but the bar dropped and snapped. And that's what was like, hey, you can't get cheap equipment. So these bars are very expensive. Then you go and you get plates. These plates need to be calibrated. Right? You don't just get some random, when I was a kid, it was the plastic shell filled with concrete. Like, this is not what people lift these days. Right? Yeah. So if you're serious about this, you're getting calibrated plates. And then you've got your rack you've got to buy, some kind of way to, to squat, to bench. Then you've got your bench itself, and maybe you're not paying for that, but then you've got a gym membership you've got to pay for. Whereas if you give me 10 grand and say, hey, buy all the kettlebells you want, cool.
You're gonna have like 9,000 left over.
It really, you really, and the thing with kettlebells that's really cool is you don't need to lay it all out at once. get a bell or two. I would recommend most people when they first start getting 3 weights and getting doubles of 1 weight.
Yeah.
And if you want to add, cool.
Yeah. And if you're curious about our more specific recommendations on that, check out the episode on the Kettlebell Quick Start Guide. We basically lay it out for you on what weights you should probably start with. That makes sense, you know?
So
and then
the expense argument, it's a non-argument.
Yeah. Just, do the math, everybody. Gym memberships are expensive. Barbells are more expensive. And kettlebells are portable. You can sit there and you can literally eliminate all your excuses to like get your ass in shape. Right.
You can buy them one at a time.
Yeah. One at a time. Because, you can make anything heavy. Just go slower or faster or longer or whatever. And I know we wanted to kind of cover this, and I think this will probably be a good spot to wrap it up, Roger. You tell me if there's something we missed, and I want you to elaborate on this a little bit more. In this day and age and the way we are, they make you pay attention, and that's a huge benefit. Roger, how is that a benefit for anybody if you got to pay attention? I paid for the bell. Now I have to pay attention? Come on.
I think what people miss with movement in general, especially as they're just getting into it and they're learning, and even me as a younger coach, we're taught this very linear kind of equation style of looking at movements. So if you do a bench press, it trains your chest. Well, now it's like, well, maybe. Like, well, first of all, who are you and what's your goal, right? Yeah, and then it's like, well, what exactly are you trying to train? Is a bench press even the right thing? I'm not thinking pecs and triceps and, where this muscle attaches and all that stuff. Like, that stuff's good to know, but I want to know, okay, let's say I have determined that a bench press is the right movement. Then I want to talk about sets, reps. I want to talk about volume. I want to talk about intensity. I want to talk about the speed of the movement. I want to talk about recovery, right? It's not this whole one-dimensional thing. So exercise, as you evolve a deeper understanding of it, you learn that it's not what you do, it's the way you do it that is more important. If you're looking to gain muscle mass, you can do all of the right exercises with the right loads, but not gain an ounce of muscle because you're doing it wrong. So how you do things really, really matters. And you see this more and more as you get more experience with exercise. But because, we talked about the proprioceptive richness of the tool, there's also no other tool that you can get as close to your body as a kettlebell that's in the same category, right? You can make an argument for a dumbbell, but you can't swing a dumbbell back between your legs the same way. So it really allows you to integrate this bell and into your body, and you can just focus. Once you connect a bell to your body, you're really just moving, and you're focusing on you. You're focusing on, how do I move through space and time? How do I tune in, pay attention? You got all these screens, all these notifications, all this stuff. This demands that you pay attention, because if you don't, you will probably hurt yourself. I do think that of all the modalities I've been aware of, kettlebells and barbells have the steepest learning curve, and they're also the ones that are most likely to injure you if you don't take them seriously. And barbells are a great way to go in and meditate. It's a great way to go in and just focus on only doing what you're doing. But if you can't do that, or if you're in a park and you don't have barbells in your trunk, but you've got a kettlebell, then this is a fantastic way to really tune into your movement. There's also something, with the breathing that's really, really rhythmic. And this is something that really helps you clue in. Kettlebells are also more conducive to endurance type work. So when you can lock in your focus and your attention, and you integrate this ball of iron into your body, and you're moving and nothing else exists, and you got this rhythmic breathing in and out, you can get to a different place that actually is a more complete fitness experience. Now, does that go toward optimal? I don't know. For some people, maybe. For some people, maybe not. But for regular Gen Pop people who are looking to be just strong enough, just fast enough, have just enough endurance to want to get a break, to be able to go grab a kettlebell, walk a few feet, and do a workout in front of a local, in the shade of a tree or at the side of a lake, it's an awesome tool that you really don't have the the ability to replicate with other modalities. One movement that I want to call out in particular, and I've told you this is not my favorite, just because I don't like to do them, it's the get up. The get up is a fantastic exercise in paying attention because there's so many pieces, there's so much intricacy that you have to be able to move in the right places. You have to be able to align under the bell. You have to really be present or something bad will happen when you're doing a get up. And the get up is another exercise that people like to make fun of because like, oh, what does that even train? Well, it actually trains your ability to move. It trains your ability to align yourself under load. And these are useful skills for regular people. So are you going to see a bunch of bodybuilders doing get ups? Probably not. It may help people move a little bit better, but even just the nature of some of these movements really will allow you to key in to focus better, to pay attention. And that's one thing that I really do think gets missed about this system. It's so complete for so many people. And I don't think this is all that you should do. I think that you should have some kettlebell stuff, and I think you should do some body weight stuff, and then you should do some cardio. And if you choose, you should mix in some barbells and dumbbells and cables, all of that stuff. But if you're looking to just get a really sizable piece of the pie, right, something that really covers just a lot of stuff, kettlebells are a fantastic system for many, many people, maybe most people. And I do think that they get a bad rap, but I think that's largely because of the dum-dums that are doing stupid things with them.
Yeah. And that's the words of a passionate man right there, folks. Real quick to put the button on it. And you said it in just that last little section, the kettlebell, you move your body and the bell's along for the ride. So if you want to move your body, be better at moving your body. I personally have found nothing better for myself. And, I'm pretty strong and I can move. And I ran a marathon, all while doing kettlebells. So you can too. Be sure to check out our YouTube page. There's tons of resources on technique for your kettlebells. There's a few workouts you can even follow along to and get the app. Even though we just told you, you can unplug. But you can also use the app to help you in this process too. Because guess what? In the app, you can't leave the app. If you leave the app, your workout's going to be like, hey, what the hell are you doing? You're out of here. So we like to maintain that focus as well. And is there anything else, Roger?
There's lots else, but I think this is a good stopping point.
Yeah, this is good. We like to keep it here, and we appreciate you listening. And as always, stay strong.